So, Tony,
Yes.
within the past couple months, I have been working on trying to get back into writing. It's been a bit difficult the past couple years or so. Inspiration may hit, but trying to hit something that feels like you're getting on a structural stride. Actually finishing a script is really difficult. I was within about a 2-week period able to finish the first draft of my second feature screenplay, which I hadn't done in a while, and I really just wanted to take this sort of opening segment, this little non sequitur, to kind of talk about what I think is one of the most important things in getting, in pushing forward on those sort of creative endeavors that I don't feel like is talked about enough. I would push to the forefront as one of the most important things is just getting your own film school if you can't afford that. And by that I mean watching more shit. And I don't just mean watching stuff that inspires you normally or watching something that necessarily entertains you. I would say going out of your way to watch stuff that you necessarily wouldn't normally find all that entertaining or all that important to you.
Yeah.
You know, that's what this whole show is kind of about, is forcing each other out of our comfort zones and finding stuff that we wouldn't normally go out of our way to both watch.
Yeah, into the weeb zone for you and into the everything else zone for me.
You know, and last night, it's something I was going to watch regardless, but just watching movies I think is so important to sort of fulfill that almost creative writing quota that as a storyteller is so important. I haven't really gone out of my way, aside from twice this year, to watch anything big MCU tentpole related because I'm just getting sick of it. But because there's a name attached to it, like it was last night, you and I watched Guardians of the Galaxy.
It's wonderful.
Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is fucking awesome. Check it out, especially if you like James Gunn's work. It was fucking fantastic, but it's because it's got that humanity, that heart that is so integral and important, and it's not as much focused on being an action movie. But really, that is what is so important, is just pushing yourself out of this comfort zone. Otherwise, you're going to get stuck and stagnated. If you talk about how much you like action movies, you want to make action movies, but all you watch is action movies, you're not going to understand what is the most important thing at that core, which is a story.
Nah.
Your solid structure, Someone who directs comedies, someone who makes comedies, I would recommend watching a lot of dramas, because a lot of those central human themes at the core of a comedy is just going to fall flat if you don't give a fuck about your characters, which is all a drama is in general, which almost falls under sort of a blanket term, but yeah, I don't know. This is me getting on my soapbox. Doesn't as much pertain to the episode, but I just wanted to get that out there. If you really want to move forward in what you're doing and make it not just a hobby, but your passion, not a career, but your passion, go watch some movies. Watch Ingmar Bergman, people. Watch Wild Strawberries, motherfucker. All that shit.
Do it.
Anyways, off my soapbox. On to the episode.
You've never seen it.
I've never seen it.
Oh my.
Inspirations.
Inspirations, yes.
Classic film.
No.
There is no such thing as an original thought. I am a person that consistently believes that, and all good art is stealing. It's partially why I brought up what I did earlier, is if you're gonna go by and you're gonna watch all this stuff that is considered classic media, classic art, you really should be going out of your way to steal stuff, and do so unapologetically. When you steal something, it's not borrowing. You don't do it with a little bit of fucking meekness. No, you take that and you don't give it fucking back.
Way back when, people used to just make songs and then everyone would sing them, and then someone decided that they owned the song, and now you can't.
Exactly.
Yeah. Everything was great until the Fire Nation.
Shut the fuck up. The director of today's film, writer-director Fritz Lang, made today's film in 1927. Fritz himself was dubbed by the British Film Institute the Master of Darkness.
Yes.
His most well-known films are 1931's M, 1933's Testament of Dr. Mabuse, and 1953's The Big Heat, and most notably, the film we are watching today. The film was co-written by his wife Thea von Harbo, whose name I don't care if I mispronounced for reasons that will become clear very soon.
I see. All right.
In 1933, Lang being Jewish, fled Germany as Hitler began his ascent to power. Meanwhile, his wife stayed behind and made Nazi propaganda. So fuck that bitch!
I see. Yes, the way all good stories start.
Yes. The film we are going to be watching tonight was ironically one of Hitler's favorite films, which you don't know what it is, but that being said, the fact this is one of his favorite films, the motherfucker had to have been more ignorant than we ever realized because the movie is giving him a middle finger.
Either that or this was just when he was on all the cocaine.
It is credited as one of the earliest works of science fiction and is also the highest budgeted of its time silent film. It is also credited for inspiring such works as Blade Runner, Akira, and of course our beloved 1977 The Star Wars.
Oh, I see.
Yes.
I think I know what this is.
And now, with all that being said, I would like to hand to you Fritz Lang's 1927 masterpiece. I want you to go ahead and leave that up to the camera.
What are you? Marxist for Dummies, a reference for the rest of us. I see.
Yeah. All right, what are we watching, Tony?
It's Metropolis, is it not?
I don't know.
We'll find out when we open the paper. Yeah, it's Metropolis.
Yes,
there it is.
the complete Metropolis. Today we are watching the Kino Lorber restoration that was put out. 25 extra minutes of footage that were rediscovered from a 16 millimeter print.
I had a feeling this was coming at some point because there is another film on the list that I need to show Colin that coincidentally is also called Metropolis.
And if my opinions / feelings / instincts are correct, whether or not it is a direct remake of it, I guarantee you it is going to be taking a lot of visual motifs from that.
I mean, it's the granddaddy of sci-fi, isn't it?
Yeah.
So probably
Yeah.
you can flip a coin and guess.
Yeah.
Probably.
This film is very important to film history as a whole. Like I said, lots of stuff taken from it. That Blade Runner's entire aesthetic, the large building where the androids are made in Blade Runner / Police Station, literally ripped from that fucking movie. C-3PO's entire design, you can look at Ralph McQuarrie concept art, and it is the android from that film. Metropolis is one of those movies that, while it has a long, complicated history of where these directors / writers landed politically, especially seeing as it was co-written by his wife, who either wrote the book this was based off of or made the script that they co-wrote into a novel so it could be credited as being written by a book. I don't know. The history is kind of fuzzy on all that, and I'm getting kind of mixed signals whenever I've tried to research it. This movie's very important, though. So, Tony, what is your general experience with this film in particular?
With this film, I've heard of it.
Yeah.
I've seen, I think, bits and pieces of old footage online. If I'm right, at some point in time, this movie was like basically lost, like to time, like, or at least chunks of the movie were lost.
No,
to the
that's why
sands.
this is the complete version.
Yeah.
Which even then, it's still missing stuff.
I know that people like do, what is it, like deep dives, whatever, on the internet to find, what is it, lost media. They mentioned Metropolis a couple times. I'm more familiar with everything that would go on to rip off everything that is in here. I guess I'm going to find out. Cause
Steal from your art, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes, I love Akira. I love Blade Runner, especially 2049. They're my favorites. So it's like, hopefully this holds up. Oh my God.
It does. If you don't think it holds up, I will have serious questionings about your entire taste.
This is the end of the series, everybody.
Why don't you head on over with us? Watch the movie if you want to, if you haven't already seen it. But today, we are going to be watching the 1927 science fiction classic, Fritz Lang's Metropolis, the complete edition.
Let's get it.
Woo! Tony. What are your majors in liberal arts school right now?
Well, you know, I don't have a major. I took my Psych 101. I've taken Economics 101. You know, I've read a couple books, and I think I'm done. I think I know everything about everything.
Aren't you just a regular little fretter then? We just watched Fritz Lang's Metropolis. Tony, before we get into this pseudo-Marxist fairy tale, what are your thoughts?
So let's start right. Visuals. Chunk aside, a lot of the visuals obviously got like damaged horribly, and they'd restore them. There's some bits that are just missing to replace with text.
Yeah.
Otherwise, filming is great. Filming is wonderful. There's all kinds of weird techniques being displayed that are just like really strange and cool, and for the 1920s. Yeah, no, that's wonderful how they like fade between stuff. It's wonderful.
Lots of analog optical shit being used.
This version of the soundtrack is wonderful. Lots of like classical bits with new spins on them.
To clarify, it's basically they took the original score that they used back in the day when this was originally shown in theaters, which hadn't really been used all that often from what I understand. There was an 80s re-release that used like synth pop that they did of this, which I actually am curious to check out. But
Yeah.
Basically this is like the first time since it's been like put back in full to what it originally was supposed to be that the film has been portrayed with its original score intact like this.
Yeah, and it's really nice. It sounds pretty. It's obviously all been re-recorded.
Yeah.
And it all sounds very pretty, and it sounds very nice. I would have loved to have been there. Just teleport me back to 1929 for just that and nothing else. I don't want to experience any more of the 20s, thank you.
Why? It's the roaring 20s.
You'd show up in 1929, and then you'd leave the year after. And just before the true nightmares began.
Yeah, no. Leave after the economic crash. Or what is it? Get there after the economic crash. Leave before World War II. Well, no, you're getting right. You're getting right in there. That timeline's all
nice
fucky.
in that, right when the party is ending.
That's the word for it.
The themes of this movie are, in a lot of ways, they're very blatant. They're very plain, and they're very like in your
plain. I wouldn't.
How do you say it?
Okay,
you said something like.
First off, I want to get into sort of the divisive nature of this movie. A lot of I brought up the whole liberal arts thing as a mean little jab on my part. I'm sorry. Not that I even disagree with a lot of you. It's just, you go in the letterbox for this, and you'll every 4 or 5 reviews run across the 1-star review calling this movie capitalist propaganda, which in itself to me is really funny. I just think that it gets a little thematically muddled with its humanist themes by the end, because the movie isn't trying as much to be this like straight up, here is the Marxist journal as close as we can possibly get it, although, they do have dismantling the means of production. They do have all this core stuff that is very key to socialists like movements and everything, and I want to clarify ahead of time as well, I am not as thoroughly educated on this as I probably should be. Not an area I'm an expert on. But even with that being said, like, the problem that a lot of people run into is the ending. Because instead of going full Marxist and taking down the capitalist overlord, it takes the humanist route of let's talk things out, which a lot of people in a modern context view that as fence sitting. Which I, to a certain extent, understand. But that being said, I cannot help when I'm watching the movie that I still get swept up in the moment. The film does what it is attempting to do and gets me so emotionally involved with these characters that when the mediator of the hearts, with the heart of the head and the hand, brings them together, it's a beautiful, emotionally powerful moment that still resonates with me, regardless of whether or not I think it fully checks out with everything that's going on display.
the world is basically just a giant machine, and the machine can be functioning just fine, but the humans inside of it are oftentimes just rotting, and that's the problem that I think the film is really looking to fucking portray.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's weird because I don't think you could just about put anything in which any political framework in which there are people at the top and then the many workers, and you could say it is a critique of that.
Yeah.
And I don't think that that's necessarily what the movie's trying to do. I think it's more about, like you've said, humanism and like connection between people and stuff. It's only in the very end when people realize, you know,
I think the whole film is about Marxism. To be frank, it's not something where those people who critique it on a basis of like this having something to do with Marxism that I disagree with. Like I said, I actually, to a certain extent, understand people's upset nature over the ending. It's more so that like I don't think it's there to say that capitalism is the correct solution. I think it is trying to get to the point where it recognizes that the leader of the capitalist system, it's portraying him as equally human, which is a thing a lot of people don't want to see because they want to be able to portray this human being who does awful stuff as just an outright monster instead of an actual character.
There are human beings in the head and there are human beings in the body.
Yeah.
It's that there's no connection between the two that causes problems. Yeah. It's when you just separate entirely from one another and don't act with each other in mind that everything falls apart.
Yeah. And it's one of my favorite just visual symbols is consistently you are being pointed to the machine of the heart, and their version of the heart is man-made. It's made by the capitalists. Our version of the heart that is supposedly the thing keeping the mediator between the two will not function without the hands and will not function without the capitalists keeping the hands of the lower class, the workers, working on it. So it's only, and this is why I say like the Marxism thing to me still works as a prominent theme, because by the end, the only thing that is actually causing any kind of progress is the means of production being destroyed. Regardless of whether or not they were tricked into it, that false heart, this fake mediator, needed to be destroyed. Just like this fake version of Maria needed to be destroyed. The tools of which capitalism is using as a mouthpiece needed to be destroyed to give way to the real human beings, the real humanist issues on display.
The fake heart really was just a barrier between the head and the body, I guess. The head and the hands. And you know, when you close yourself off like that, when you replace heart with a machine that doesn't think and doesn't feel and only functions, you know, humans inside, they rot. Now, Colin, the real question is, how is this Hitler's favorite movie? How do you figure that is?
So, the delusional narcissist, if we're trying to come up with a logical, probable answer to this, probably viewed himself as the protagonist. And I told you this in the car on our way back here. It's kind of one of those things where it becomes a confusing mess to try to be like, well, did Hitler, who was an art major, so you would think you would have to understand subtext, not get the subtext, but then you realize most of the things that you may try and look at as subtext are just literal text.
But yeah, a lot of this is just literal text. They explain the story of the Tower of Babylon.
Yeah.
They just explain
it's
it.
Tower of Babel, sir.
Atari of Babylon. Yeah.
Did you say the Atari of Babylon?
The Atari of Babylon.
And with that, I'm sure it is just an ego thing, and I'm sure by the end, Hitler's interpretation probably was, you see, the government and the lower class can work together, and we can all be one big happy family. So I don't understand how this would have been Hitler, like one of Hitler's like favorite movies. Just like I don't understand how Mickey Mouse was something Hitler was apparently a huge fan of.
I think it's just, you know, oh God, how do you say it? You can project your own feelings and your own ideas about the world onto a character when they do not explicitly tell you every fine detail of how they're planning to make the world work together. Fred is very much like, we just need to find a way to get the head and the hands to work together. And I'm going to be the mediator here. I think that's what Hitler might have thought he was trying to be. I think that it's very strange. It's very weird and hard to believe, but I think that might genuinely be it.
I don't think so, specifically because Hitler was trying to separate and segregate.
Yes.
So, and it's not even a thing of like, oh, well, that is a interpretation. No, Hitler was trying to. I don't think that was something he was necessarily trying to like justify as. No, Hitler just hated Jewish people, and he was trying to drive them out. So, this was pre-World War II, but Hitler's rise to power happens a few years after this, and to show him taking a lot of the working class and shoving them into what are essentially the ghettos of World War II Germany, it's this movie just kind of portraying what the future would end up being, not just farther into the future, more accurate to where we are now, but also the future of a few years from now, back in 1927.
And let's just stop for a moment. The movie takes place in, I believe it is 2021.
I said that I don't know if that's entirely accurate. I'm going to put the right date right here, and if that is entirely.
So
but it is in the 21st century.
Yeah. Let's just line up all of the things that they guessed 100% correctly would happen. We have high traffic interstate.
Overpass on overpass on overpass on overpass.
That just cuts straight through the city.
Yeah.
That cuts straight through the city.
Yeah.
We have chunks of cities that are pretty well perfectly segregated from one another. In this case, in a literal, the Earth's crust is acting as the great mediator between this like upper level, like gated community almost, and everyone else.
Yeah.
We have building up towers to be immensely tall and incredibly simple from the outside, and incredibly expensive to live in, to the point where if you lose your job, you're sent straight down into the depths.
Yeah.
There is no separation there, I guess.
Well, that's one of the things I actually really like about that whole scene of Jehoshaphat. It's not that he was ordered to go to the lower class areas. It's that he's literally given no other option, to the point where it shows him walking down the staircase about to blow his fucking brains out.
He knows what the system just did to him,
Yeah.
but he just doesn't want to wait through the go to talk to the person at the bank and go talk to this and this and this and climb your way down into hell, basically.
Yeah.
He's just saying, well, whatever, I know where this is going. Let's take the easy exit strategy. And it's only when the heart comes to talk to him that, he's given another chance.
And once again, I can kind of understand to a certain extent why Fred, as a protagonist, may almost be putting himself in this kind of like white savior mindset, because it's literally a member of the 1% coming down and being the one to help people. Now, I don't think that is what the movie's intending to get across, but that's the best part about thematic shit. It's very subjective, and you can interpret that in any way you want, and depending on your own life experience, Fred could be viewed as this bullshit Christ figure that you don't want to fucking look up to. And that's completely valid. I don't know.
A bit of a fucking unicorn, I think. A weird parallel for that is just the unicorn in Blade Runner, where some people look at that unicorn that says and they say this is the most important thing. That little unicorn represents everything that is great about that movie, and other people look at it and they say that's awful. No, that ruins the film entirely.
Well, okay, and also you have only seen the final cut of Blade Runner. The thing that I find so fascinating about the unicorn, the only other cut I've watched is the theatrical cut. None of that's in the original movie. The unicorn was something that was added as sort of a indicator from Ridley Scott, because Ridley Scott, the director, and this goes into the whole auteur theory thing, and whether or not the author has more dictation over larger interpretations than the audience, and whether or not art belongs to the audience after it's gone. But even then, getting lost in this, it's based off of a book, so it's technically not even Ridley Scott's story.
Wow.
But that being said, with that, Ridley Scott's whole thing is, no, Deckard is an android, but then you have Denis Villeneuve, who directed Arrival, 2049, the first Dune movie that came out, I think Sicario, if I remember correctly, is this guy who thinks that Deckard isn't a replicant. It's not, oh, I want to leave it ambiguous. It is just overtly a replicant. But then the thing about Villeneuve that is so fascinating that he does, that I respect a lot, is he doesn't overtly say Deckard is not a replicant, just like, or say Deckard for sure is a replicant. He leaves it fully ambiguous within the context of that movie and has a scene where Jared Leto's character makes it very clear you could be a replicant or you could not be, but that doesn't matter because that is not the point and that has never been the point of the story. Interpretation on that kind of stuff gets like a bit muddied, and I think the reason people end up being so impassioned about stuff with this movie is because it is so heavily and intrinsically political.
Yeah.
Which I get, but also then you're running into this whole thing of, you know, someone like, say, my father, who views communist and socialism and Marxism all as one thing.
Yeah, anything that isn't us right here, right now is the other.
Yeah. And overall, it's like, none if you want to talk about, you know, just base level aesthetic stuff that I just absolutely adore that goes into like one of my favorite things about movies, which is just myth-making. You're not making a film to necessarily capture the here and the now or the real future. You're capturing the past and all these tales that have been retold over and over again. One of the large machines that everyone's operating in synchronization eventually turns into this large sacrificial altar that they're then pushing people into. And then, like you said, literally, the story is just a retelling of the Tower of Babel on a fucking macro level and then a micro level on top of that. And then just the amount of stuff this went on to inspire visually is fucking insane. I have not shown you. I'm going to pull this out right now. I told you it's like Ralph McQuarrie's illustration for C-3PO.
Yes.
It's literally...
Whoopsie, all theft.
Yeah. Blade Runner, and then Blade Runner has murky whether or not Blade Runner inspired Akira or Akira inspired Blade Runner because they came out so close to each other.
It's probably like a case of very parallel thought.
I'm going to say one ripped the other off because there is too much in common with that shit.
I don't know.
For it to be like just a coincidence. But that being said, either or, one of them, whichever came first, had Metropolis on the brain, because there is that shot towards the end where Fredder's dad is sitting up in his large tower, which is literally the Blade Runner police station.
Yes, the Tyrell or Wallace Corporation.
Yeah, Tyrell Corporation.
Yeah, replace whichever massive corporation owns that sector of the planet.
Yeah, no, they're looking down on everything, and then it cuts to the white of the city where all the neon is finally out. Replace all those generic German ads with like Coca-Cola and strippers and all that shit, and you got just straight up Blade Runner and everything, and it's fucking awesome. I love that just art inspires art inspires art inspires art. It's a cyclical loop that is never going to end.
And theft is perfectly okay if no one claims to own anything.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you have on this movie? Any other thoughts?
Really? The difference between movies like Blade Runner and Akira and this movie, I think, is that the ending of this movie is very genuinely hopeful. Mm-hmm. It's very genuinely hopeful. It's a bleak situation. The city's been basically crippled because of the riots and the uprising. But you know, there's still a place to go, and they're still like, we're going to fix this.
That's the Marxist side of the whole situation.
Yeah. Whereas Blade Runner has this very weird happy ending for one character, and then everyone else is still left in nightmare fucking present, you know.
And then you watch 2049, and then it's a nightmare fucking ending for everyone.
Yeah.
That's the worst.
And with Akira, you know, in the book, the manga, and in the film, you know, Tokyo is ruined. Tokyo is destroyed beyond repair, and all that's left is basically this biker gang and a few people left, and they're just going to try and start over again. But it's pretty clear cut. The world is over.
And as long as nukes exist, it will happen again. Then that's the difference between cynicism and a hopeful, like, and like the hopeful mindset is that it's either going to be like, well, humans will always rebuild, but is that rebuilding a part of humans always destroy whatever they make? Once again, you get into the whole Tower of Babel myth, which the movie goes into on top of that. So even those themes do still exist in the fairly relatively hopeful version of that. That is Metropolis.
Is it all a cycle, and is the cycle doomed to repeat itself?
Yeah.
I don't know. Well, I guess we'll find out, because sometime in the year, I think it was 2000 actually, exactly, another movie came out. One very similar to this one. And if you tune in next month, you might get a peek at that movie. We'll see.
Is it next month, or are you perusing me?
Oh boy. We'll have to find out on the next episode of Dragon Ball Z. Chef! All right, now make sure, don't put my face. I want them to see what my face looks like.
No, especially okay. You can take off the mask now since it's not recording.
Yes. Jesus, I don't want them to see what I look like when I say chef.
I know, and I mean the flippers, the gills, everything. It's just kind of
yeah.
It doesn't compare to my face.
It's a whole process getting this all off. I'll do it in a minute. But God,
it doesn't compare to my face, especially the glass eye. The glass eye is more than I feel like people can
I feel like you got good control over the glass eye, though.
The glass eye? Really? You think I have control over that?
No, you look at me in the eye most of the time.
Most of the time. That's the fucking point. I can't fucking stand you. It's not gonna